So, picture this: I'm 18, just out of high school, and my parents basically kicked me out with nothing but a trash bag of clothes. Fast forward 12 years, and at my brother's huge, fancy wedding, they announced they're giving him the house I grew up in. Yeah, my childhood home. I know. Right. But here's the twist: I wasn't powerless. I had one document, just one, that could completely turn everything upside down. Stick around, because what happens next? Well, it's wild. The migraines had been relentless for 3 days, each one twisting from the base of my skull around my eyes like a vice made of hot iron. I was lying on my bathroom floor, a cold towel pressed against my cheek, trying to steady my breathing, trying not to hurl. It was the only place in my apartment that felt even remotely bearable. My phone buzzed on the bath mat, jarring me with a sound that felt like it drilled straight into my brain. I didn't want to answer it. Usually, a buzzing phone meant a client crisis, maybe a deal going sideways at work. But this time, when I squinted at the screen, it wasn't a client. It was Grandma Beatrice. That alone made my heart do this weird flutter. Grandma never called in the middle of the day unless someone was seriously sick or worse. I sat up slowly, the room tilting dangerously, and swiped to answer. Grandma. My voice cracked, rough and gravelly from dehydration and hours of sickness. She sounded tense, not fragile, but fiery in a way that made the hair on my neck stand up. Holly, tell me you knew. Tell me you just didn't want to worry me. I rubbed my temples, trying to focus through the pounding. Knew what, Grandma? I'm sick. I haven't left my apartment since Tuesday. What's going on? There was a pause, thick with static and the harsh intake of her breath. Finally, she said it, clipped and sharp. The wedding. It's this Saturday. Wait, my brain literally refused to compute. Saturday. That couldn't be right. Mom had told me they were postponing it until next spring because Jared couldn't pick a venue. I hadn't even gotten to save the date. I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come out properly, my head thumping. Grandma's voice cut in, sharp as a whip. It's this Saturday, and that's not even the worst part. My stomach dropped like I'd fallen through a trapdoor. My brother, the golden child, my parents' perfect son, was being groomed, polished, adored, and me, the scapegoat, the one erased from every memory they wanted to save. And now, to hide the wedding. To lie about the date, what could possibly be worse than that? My heart pounding in my ears. I asked, though I almost didn't want to know. The rehearsal lunch. Holly, your mother. She stood up to make a toast. She told everyone they're giving Jared the house. Your house. The world tilted, and suddenly clarity hit like a punch. The Victorian on Elm Street, the one place I'd felt safe, the one place that had been stripped from me the day I turned 18 and found my bags on the porch. They were handing it to him, right in front of everyone. I closed my eyes, swallowed hard. They can't do that, I whispered. Grandma snapped back, anger blazing through the phone. Unless you come. Holly, I told them if you aren't there, I'm not coming. And if you don't come, I'm pulling the funding for the honeymoon. My head throbbed. My body felt weak. My stomach churned. But beneath it all, something hard and cold started to form. They were erasing me, taking everything I had left in memory and handing it to the boy who had tormented me for years. I couldn't let that happen. I'll be there, I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "Good," Grandma said, "because I need you to see this. I need you to see what they've become." I hung up, sank back into the tile, tears stinging my eyes. It wasn't just exclusion or favoritism. It was sheer, unadulterated cruelty. They weren't just gifting him a house, they were giving him my history. The tangible proof of everything they had taken from me. The next 24 hours were a blur of recovery and simmering fury. I forced water down my throat, nibbled at toast, showered off the sickness, and prepared myself to face them sharp and focused. I couldn't go in looking like a wounded animal. Sylvia would lap that up as proof I was unstable, a narrative she'd been spinning for over a decade. The following afternoon, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mom. I stared at the screen for a long moment, surrounded by legal briefs, wearing a silk robe that screamed quiet luxury. I took a deep breath, braced myself, and answered. "Hello, Sylvia," I said, flatly. Her sugary voice immediately hit my nerves. "Holly, I'm so glad I caught you," she trilled, every word dripping with false sweetness. "Grandma had mentioned the wedding," I said, my tone clipped. "Yes," she replied, hesitating ever so slightly. "We changed the date last minute. We didn't think you'd manage with your little job. I was a senior partner at a major law firm. That little job," my blood boiled. But I kept my tone flat. "I can make it," I said. "Grandma wouldn't attend unless I did." Her voice softened slightly. "Yes. Well," Sylvia added, "if you insist, we'll find a chair at the back. Table 19, near the kitchen. But please, control your jealousy." The house, I thought that's what she meant. The house I'd grown up in. The house they were trying to hand to Jared while silencing me. I didn't speak. I just nodded to myself. I had a plan, and it was time to put it into action. I looked down at the papers I'd brought from the office, the trust, the revocation, the notary stamps. My hands gripped the folder tight. They had forgotten one key detail. You can't give away what you don't legally own. And I did. Sitting there, pulse racing, I realized that, migraine and all, I wasn't powerless. I had every tool I needed to reclaim what was mine. And for the first time in days, the weight in my chest didn't feel like defeat. It felt like focused fire. This was only the beginning, and Grandma Beatrice, my steadfast ally, had made sure of it. To really understand why this wedding was such a ticking time bomb, you need to know the history. I was the scapegoat, always the one who had to prove myself, while my brother, Jared, was the golden child. Everything came easy to him, or at least that's how my parents made it look. I was 18, freshly graduated, bags packed by the porch, a partial scholarship to a state university, and no support system. My parents said they needed the space for Jared, because of course, he needed his room for his future as a professional gamer. He wasn't even close to a professional at 15. He spent hours screaming at screens, throwing controllers, losing his temper, and somehow, that was always fine. But me, I had just bought textbooks with my waitressing money, and I needed a place to live over the summer and a co-signer for my loans. "You're an adult," my mother said from the doorway, perfectly poised with a glass of wine in her hand. Beautiful, icy, evaluating every net worth, every flaw, every opportunity to belittle me. "Figure it out. We've supported you long enough. It's Jared's turn." And just like that, I left. I lived in my car for 3 months, showering at the gym, working 3 jobs, all while putting myself through college and then law school. Not a dime from them. I had to hustle for everything, every single thing, while my brother lounged in the house I'd grown up in, his failures cushioned by my parents' wealth and indulgence. And during holidays, I was still the one bringing gifts. Expensive wine, trying to earn love I had never really had. Meanwhile, Jared never left. He launched several failed businesses from that same room, tried t-shirt companies, crypto mining rigs that hiked the electric bill, podcasts that no one listened to. At 29, his career was listed as lifestyle consultant on a wedding website, which basically meant he was unemployed, living off my parents' retirement fund. And the gift of the house at the wedding, that was the ultimate cruel symbol of the inequality that had defined my entire life. They were giving him my childhood home, the only place that had ever felt like safety, the place where I'd cried over homework, the place that held all the memories of being a child they never valued. It was everything they had taken from me, and now they were turning it into a gift for him. But here's the thing, they didn't account for one crucial detail. Grandma Beatrice had put the house in a trust, and it was revocable. I specialized in property law. I knew exactly what that meant. While they were busy planning a theatrical reveal for the guests, I had the power to stop it. That house, the Victorian on Elm Street, wasn't theirs to hand over. I had grown up fast, shaped by necessity, by hardship. I learned to survive on my own, to fight for what I needed, and to never, ever rely on their approval or their so-called love. Every job I worked, every exam I passed, every late night I endured, it wasn't just for money. It was proof that I could succeed, despite them. That I could take a life that started with betrayal and neglect and turn it into something solid, something real. Meanwhile, Jared had the perfect setup: a room, meals, no accountability, and a family cheering him on while they erased me. Every failed business, every gaming meltdown, every irresponsibility was met with indulgence. They elevated him on my neck, literally and figuratively, and now, 12 years later, they were handing him my past like a trophy, expecting me to sit quietly, to blend in at the wedding, to swallow the insult while the champagne flowed. The sheer audacity of it was staggering. And yet, there was a spark in me that hadn't died. I remembered lying on that bathroom floor during the migraine, my head pounding, my body weak, my heart heavy, and thinking I will not let them erase me again. I would reclaim what they tried to take, and not with anger, not with a scene, but with precision, because after all those years, after all the struggles, I had the knowledge, the tools, and the resilience they had denied me. I had worked 3 jobs and gone through law school on my own. I had earned every inch of the life I had built. And now, I was standing on the edge of the ultimate confrontation, with the power to turn their performance of generosity into the truth. That house wasn't just property, it was a symbol of safety, of love I never received, of the childhood that had been stolen from me. And as I thought about walking into that wedding, sitting at table 19, hidden from their gaze, watching them parade their golden child, I felt a strange calm. Years of pain had led to this moment. I wasn't powerless anymore. I had the law, I had strategy and I had clarity. They had assumed I was invisible. They had assumed I wouldn't fight. They had assumed wrong. And honestly, for the first time in years, I felt ready. Not just to witness them handing over my past to someone who didn't deserve it, but to claim what had always been mine. The next day, I woke up feeling raw, the migraine still clawing at the edges of my skull. But a sense of urgency overrode every ache. I forced myself to drink water, to eat, to shower off the sickness, each movement deliberate, purposeful. I had to be sharp, focused. There was no room for weakness. Sylvia would have thrived on a shaky, pale version of me. I couldn't give her that satisfaction. I dressed in a tailored gray skirt and silk blouse. Something understated yet professional. The kind of outfit that quietly said, I'm in control. Sitting at my dining table, surrounded by legal briefs and documents for clients, my mind was spinning faster than it had in days, trying to map out my next moves. I needed to plan, to anticipate every possible maneuver my parents might attempt. My phone rang, and I saw Sylvia's name light up the screen. For a long moment, I didn't answer. Then I did, my voice steady and measured. Hello, Sylvia. Her sugariest, rehearsed voice came through immediately, the kind of tone she reserved for an audience she wanted to impress. Holly, so good to catch you. I just wanted to touch base about the wedding. I kept my tone flat, neutral. The wedding. The one Grandma mentioned is this Saturday, a slight hesitation in her voice. Oh, well, yes. We changed the date last minute. Honestly, we thought with your little job, you wouldn't be able to make it. We didn't want to pressure you. Little job. I almost laughed. I was a partner at one of the city's top firms. She had no idea. I didn't correct her, though. I can make it, I said calmly. Grandma had told me she wouldn't attend unless I did. There was a pause on her end, and then a delicate, condescending laugh. Yes. Well, we can squeeze a chair in at the back, table 19 near the kitchen. Please, try to control your jealousy. We are giving Jared a very significant gift, and I don't want you sulking in the corner. The house. That's what she meant. They were handing him my childhood home and trying to silence me before I even set foot in the room. My heart pounded. I looked down at the papers I had brought from the office, safe yesterday. The manila envelope heavy with consequence. Inside, each document felt like a loaded weapon. The original trust agreement signed by Grandma Beatrice 20 years ago, placing the Elm Street house under my father's management. The revocation notice executed 3 days ago, officially stripping him of trustee status. The quitclaim deed transferring the property directly to me. Each paper bore embossed county seals and notarized signatures, unassailable. And then the lien search, revealing my brother's significant debts. I slid my fingers over the smooth, cream-colored paper, tracing the notary's stamp, letting the reality sink in. They thought they could manipulate, lie, and perform generosity in front of the wedding guests. But they had forgotten one crucial thing: knowledge. I had the law on my side. I took a deep breath, tasting the faint metallic tang of adrenaline. I could feel the migraine receding slightly, replaced by a cold, hard focus. Every detail had to be perfect. I rehearsed the sequence in my mind. Arrive early. Sit quietly at table 19 invisible until it was time to act. Observe my parents, gauge the room, anticipate the toasts and speeches, and then reveal the truth at exactly the right moment. I couldn't let emotion dictate my moves. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine and protecting my grandmother's legacy. I glanced at my phone again, seeing the message from my paralegal, Sarah, confirming the transfer was recorded and locked in the county system. Any attempt to intervene on Monday would be rejected immediately. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't just power, it was control. I made myself a cup of tea, letting the steam rise and clear my head. The room smelled faintly of parchment, ink, and the faint antiseptic tang from the migraine medicine. I organized the documents into a precise order: the original trust, the revocation, the quitclaim deed, the lien search. I clipped them together, each paper a silent declaration the house belonged to me. The plan was set, but I had to anticipate interactions. When I called Mom the previous afternoon, I noticed her slip-ups, the hesitation in her voice, the tiny cracks in her polished veneer. She didn't realize I was observing, cataloging, and preparing. Each word she said became a piece of evidence, a way to confirm her assumptions about me and her expectations for the day. Her sugary tone, her repeated reminders about controlling jealousy, the backhanded references to my career as a little job, all part of her performance, all recorded in my mind for later. The careful, deliberate work I had done over the past week, the filings, the notarizations, the verification with Sarah, it was more than just preparation, it was armor. The migraine throbbed faintly behind my eyes, a reminder of human vulnerability, but I couldn't let it dominate. I sipped water, rubbed the bridge of my nose, and visualized the moment I'd walk into the reception. Table 19, tucked behind a column, a vantage point that gave me a full view without being the center of attention. Guests arriving, my parents, holding court, Jared oblivious, Courtney radiant and unsuspecting. Every nuance mattered: timing, tone, movement. I rehearsed mentally how to reveal the documents, how to assert my position without being accusatory or emotional. The law was my shield, my truth, my voice louder than any shout they could muster. I checked my reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back wasn't the scared 18-year-old crying on the porch. She was measured, controlled, prepared. Every hair, every wrinkle of fabric, every detail conveyed subtle authority. I leaned back in my chair, letting the gravity of it sink in. Hours of migraine, nausea, and exhaustion had honed me to this point. Every sacrifice, every struggle for independence, every moment my parents belittled or ignored me, it had all built toward this clarity. The house, the legacy, the proof, it was mine. Grandma's trust had ensured that, and I had ensured it was legally untouchable. I double-checked the documents once more. The county seal, the notarization, the trust revocation, the quitclaim deed, the lien search, all confirmed, all validated. Nothing could be undone in the moment. Nothing that could be manipulated on a whim. I set the folder next to my chair, opened my laptop, and drafted a few notes for the confrontation calm, factual statements, each carefully worded to assert authority without sounding confrontational. I wasn't going to raise my voice unnecessarily. The law spoke louder than emotion. I reviewed the schedule, arrival time, table location, observation points, timing for the reveal. Every detail mattered, down to when the applause would likely rise, and how to time my walk to maximize the impact. I rehearsed the wording in my head, slightly aloud, feeling the phrases roll off my tongue. Natural, calm, control. The migraine had dulled to a background hum. It didn't matter. My body was tired, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I had the documents, the law, the timing, and the strategy. I wasn't just walking into a wedding. I was walking into a meticulously constructed stage, and I was about to flip the script. I glanced again at the papers, feeling the weight of them in my hands, the legal authority they represented. Grandma's warning, her insistence that I attend, echoed in my mind. This was about more than a house. It was about family, justice, and reclaiming the narrative that had been stolen from me at 18. I felt a quiet calm wash over me. The migraine, the sickness, the fatigue, they were all fading, replaced by purpose. I wasn't just preparing for confrontation, I was preparing for reclamation. And as I stood, adjusting the skirt of my dress, smoothing my hair, I felt ready to face my parents, ready to confront the lies, ready to take back what had been mine all along. The house wasn't just a building, it was history, memory, and closure. And now, with the law firmly on my side, I was ready to step into that room and make them see exactly who had the power. I arrived at the country club hours before the ceremony, the crisp autumn air carrying the scent of roasted meats and blooming white roses. The place was drenched in wealth and perfection, exactly the kind of scene Sylvia thrived on. White chiffon hung from the ceilings, fairy lights twinkled over every surface, and a swing band played jazzy versions of pop songs, creating this bizarre mix of elegance and forced cheer. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. Table 19 was tucked behind a large decorative column, just where Grandma said it would be. I settled into the chair, adjusting the bag at my feet, heavy with the documents that could change everything. From here, I could see my parents before I was seen, like a hawk surveying the nest. Sylvia was orchestrating the florists, heels digging into the grass, eyes sharp and sharp-tongued, barking orders with her usual mix of charm and intimidation. Robert trailed behind, holding her purse like a red-faced, anxious bodyguard, completely absorbed in her theatrics. And there was Jared, my brother, laughing with his groomsmen, oblivious to the world outside his bubble of privilege. He was smug, unbothered, untouched by the real struggles I'd faced. Grandma sat beside me, gripping her cane with white-knuckled intensity, looking regal in navy blue. "You brought it?" she asked, eyes fixed on the unfolding chaos. I patted the sleek black leather tote at my feet. "I brought it," I said. The weight of the papers felt grounding in my hands. "Good," she said, jaw tight, eyes fierce. "He came to see me yesterday, asking if I was going to finally die so he could turn my cottage into an Airbnb. He thought he was funny. He's a monster, Holly, made by two other monsters." My blood ran cold, and I swallowed hard. Grandma wasn't exaggerating. She gestured toward the head table where Sylvia and Robert held court. "They think the house is theirs. Robert put the title in his name years ago to manage taxes, but they forgot the trust states you retain revocation rights. And they don't know you specialize in property law," she added softly. I nodded, absorbing everything. They underestimated me, assumed I'd be the invisible, weak girl they always wanted me to be. But I wasn't her anymore. I was prepared, and today they were going to see that. I observed Sylvia as she finally noticed us. Her smile dropped for the briefest moment before snapping back into place. She turned to Robert and whispered, her voice quick, sharp. Then she started marching toward us, heels clicking on the stone path, every step radiating authority and expectation. "Here she comes," I murmured under my breath. "Let her come," Grandma replied, calm as ever. The trap was set, everything in place. Sylvia stopped 3 feet away, scrutinizing me. "You're early," she said. No greeting, her eyes sharp. "Beatrice, please don't start with the sour face. It's a joyous occasion," Grandma quipped. "It's a circus," she added, her voice low, but lethal. I sat straight, chin up, maintaining calm. My gray dress was understated, perfect. Yet the way I crossed my legs and adjusted my posture signaled quiet control. Sylvia's glare sharpened, moving toward my bag. "I hope you didn't bring some cheap, sentimental gift to make a scene with." "We have a registry, I replied, calm, controlled. I didn't bring a gift for the registry, just some paperwork I needed to review." "Won't be long." Her lips pressed together, eyes narrowing. "Paperwork. Always trying to look important. Just try not to embarrass us today." "Holly," she said, before turning on her heel, barking orders at a passing waiter carrying champagne flutes. I exhaled slowly, letting the quiet calm wash over me. She had no idea. They were worrying about napkin colors, table placements, while the ground beneath them had already shifted. They thought I was there to embarrass them. I wasn't. I was there to evict them metaphorically and legally. I adjusted the papers in my bag, feeling their weight, letting the knowledge of ownership anchor me. My parents believed they held power, that the crowd, the ceremony, the performance gave them authority, but all of that could be undone in moments. I let my eyes sweep over the guests, the couples chatting, the florists bustling, the band warming up. I watched Jared, full of unearned confidence, oblivious. Every laugh, every gesture, every micro-expression was cataloged, stored. Timing would matter. I would wait for the moment when their performance was at its peak, when the crowd's attention was fully captured, and then reveal the truth. My pulse was steady, but my adrenaline surged with anticipation. I wasn't rushing, but I could feel the narrative bending, ready to snap. I leaned back slightly, letting my gaze linger on Sylvia, reading her posture, her forced calm, her poised perfection. Robert looked on, puzzled at her sudden tension. I was ready to step into the light when the time was right. Grandma's hand squeezed mine, a silent confirmation that she trusted me, that she believed in the plan. I took another slow breath, tasting the faint crispness of autumn in the air, the smell of roses and leather, the faint tang of perfume. Every sense was heightened, every movement purposeful. The swing band's soft notes floated across the lawn, punctuating the tension. I rehearsed the internal sequence: enter quietly, observe, wait for the toast, act decisively, assert legal authority, protect Grandma's legacy. The world seemed to slow down, each moment loaded with possibility. And as Sylvia continued to orchestrate the chaos around her, completely unaware that the very foundation of her show was about to crumble, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Today, they thought they controlled the room, but I had the power, the strategy, and the law on my side. All that remained was timing, observation, and patience. I settled in further, folding my hand over the leather tote, a calm predator watching her prey, waiting for the perfect moment to reclaim what was always mine. The moment came faster than I expected, The toasts had started, the champagne was flowing, and I could feel the energy in the room thick with performance and expectation. My parents were at the head table, Sylvia in her flawless gown, projecting that perfect smile to the guests. Robert beside her, looking pleased with himself, oblivious to the storm brewing right behind their polished facade. I stood, my bag at my side, the folder of documents feeling heavier than ever. Each step toward them was measured, calm, purposeful. I could feel the eyes of a few guests flick toward me, curiosity mingling with the scent of perfume and expensive cologne. Sylvia caught my movement first, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second, then returning with practiced grace. "Holly," she said, her voice sugary, tight. "You're early." I tilted my chin slightly, meeting her gaze evenly. "I just wanted to congratulate you on such a generous gesture," I said, voice calm, deliberate. "Very noble of you." She blinked, momentarily taken aback. "Well, yes, it is," she said, regaining composure. "We take care of our family. You should be grateful." I nodded, letting the pause stretch just long enough. "Actually, you can't give it to Jared," I said, lifting the black leather folder just slightly. My heart pounded, but I didn't rush. I wanted her to feel the weight of the words before the proof followed. Robert's brow furrowed, confusion washing over his features. Sylvia's smile tightened, sharp, defensive. "Excuse me," she said, voice rising. "The house," I continued, calm but firm, "is legally mine. Grandma Beatrice put it in a trust, and I am the trustee. You can't transfer it to Jared, not today, not ever, without my consent." For a heartbeat, silence. The room seemed to hold its breath. The murmurs of guests faded, and I could see their faces, all curious, all sensing something had shifted. Robert's face drained of color, his jaw tightening. What are you talking about?" he stammered. "I bought that house 30 years ago. I can do whatever I want with it." I lifted the folder fully now, the documents rustling slightly, subtle but commanding. "Actually, Dad, you didn't buy it. Grandma did, and she placed it in a trust. I am the trustee. I hold full authority. I have the legal documents to prove it." Robert's hands shook slightly as he reached toward the folder. Sylvia stepped in quickly, positioning herself between me and the papers. "You are drunk, jealous, trying to ruin the wedding," she hissed, voice rising. "I'm not drunk," I said, keeping my tone steady, projecting clarity. "And I'm not jealous. I'm telling you the truth. You are committing fraud by trying to hand over this house without my consent." The color drained from her face, just enough to let a flicker of fear show through her polished veneer. She opened her mouth, flustered, but I didn't give her the opportunity to fabricate. I pulled a document from the folder, the revocation and quitclaim deed laid out, embossed seals catching the light. "As of Thursday at 9:15 a.m., the property at 42 Elm Street belongs to me," I said. The words carried clear, carrying the weight of authority. The guests shifted, murmurs growing louder, some turning their heads to follow the unfolding drama. Robert's hands trembled, scanning the lines frantically. This is impossible," he whispered, panic creeping into his voice. Sylvia's face contorted with disbelief and rage. "She tricked an old woman. This is elder abuse. We'll sue you, disbar you." I shook my head slightly, keeping my composure. "Grandma is of sound mind. I have the affidavit from her doctor, signed the same day. I have the video recording of the signing. There is not a single loophole you can exploit. The room was dead silent now. Even the band had paused mid-note. Guests were watching, holding their glasses, unsure what to make of this sudden confrontation. Jared, at the head table, froze, his giant cardboard key in hand, confusion and panic on his face. He looked to Sylvia, seeking guidance, but she was paralyzed, sputtering incoherent threats. I dropped my voice slightly, low enough for only them to hear. It's not about money, Jared. It's about the debt. The $80,000 in gambling you've accumulated, which this house was about to cover. And now, it won't. It belongs to me. His face went pale, a flicker of fear replacing the smugness he had worn for decades. Sylvia gasped, hands clutching her pearls, eyes wide. Robert's mouth opened and closed, producing no sound. The tension was unbearable, thick as the champagne in glasses around us. I held the folder out slightly, letting the embossed seal gleam under the chandelier. You can't override the law, I said, steady, calm, each word deliberate. Grandma revoked your control, and I am the trustee. The house is mine, legally, fully, without exception. The room seemed to shrink around them. Guests whispered, craning necks to catch details. The weight of truth pressed down on my parents, their carefully constructed facade cracking under the scrutiny of everyone present. Sylvia's hands shook, her voice rising in pitch. She's lying. This is a forgery. She's unstable. I shook my head. You're wrong. Completely. And the law agrees. I am not here to ruin the wedding. I'm here to enforce what's legally correct, to protect the property Grandma entrusted to me. Robert's face went red, purple, then gray, his disbelief mixing with panic. He opened his mouth to argue, but the words caught in his throat. Every guest's gaze was fixed on them, the tension palpable, the realization settling in that the perfect show of generosity was about to implode. I exhaled, letting the calm I had maintained throughout the day radiate outward. No shouting, no theatrics, just truth and authority. The legal document spoke louder than any raised voice or tearful performance. I could feel Grandma's presence beside me, quiet but formidable, giving me strength. The room shifted, a collective intake of breath from the audience. The power dynamic had irrevocably changed. I wasn't the powerless daughter anymore, the scapegoat, the one they could ignore or dismiss. I was a professional, a legal authority, armed with irrefutable proof. The shock on their faces was gratifying. But more than that, it was the confirmation that years of struggle, of working 3 jobs, surviving in a car, putting myself through school, had culminated in this exact moment. They underestimated me for the last time, and as the silence stretched, heavy and charged, I realized that the confrontation had only just begun. But already, the ground beneath my parents' perfect little world had started to crack. I wasn't angry in a chaotic way. I was precise, methodical, aware of every eye on us, every detail, every possible reaction. This was no longer a family dispute. It was the enforcement of justice, measured, calculated, and unassailable. They could glare, they could sputter, they could threaten. None of it mattered. I had the law, I had the proof, and I had the calm to see this through. And as I stood there, the folder in my hand, I knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. The room was silent after the initial confrontation, tension hanging thick like a fog. Sylvia and Robert were reeling from the legal documents, their performance of generosity collapsing in real time. But I wasn't done. There was one more piece, one that would finally expose the full scope of their deceit. I turned my attention to Jared, my brother, who was still holding that ridiculous, oversized, gold-painted key, looking completely lost, his smugness evaporating fast. His lips trembled, and I could see the panic starting to edge into his eyes. I leaned slightly toward him, voice low but firm, making sure the words landed where they needed to. "Jared, you might want to return that key," I said calmly, a faint edge of irony in my tone. He frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" he asked, voice wavering. "You're just mad you didn't get a cut. Right. Always about the money with you." I shook my head slowly, letting the room absorb the tension. "It's not about the money, Jared. It's about the debt. The $80,000 in gambling you're trying to hide from your new wife." His face went pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He took a step forward, but his movement was hesitant. He looked to Sylvia, who was desperately trying to regain control, but her face was a mixture of shock and fury. "You can't say that," Jared hissed, trying to assert authority he didn't have. "Yes, I can," I said, calm, voice steady. "And I will, because it's true. And everyone here deserves to know the full picture before any decisions are made. That house you were about to get, it would have been gone within a week, under creditors' claims." Courtney, his bride, froze mid-sip of her champagne, eyes widening, mascara streaking slightly from the stress, though she hadn't realized it yet. What are you saying?" she asked, voice small, trembling. I moved a fraction closer to her, making sure she could hear me clearly. My words soft but deliberate. "Ask him to show you his credit report before you sign any mortgage papers. Make sure this is really safe, because right now, it's not. He owes $80,000 pending on several high-interest accounts. And there's more if you dig further." A collective gasp ran through the room. Guests who had been holding champagne glasses now set them down, murmuring, glancing between the documents. Jared and us. Jared's hands went to his face. Panicked, he looked to Sylvia again, desperate. She was frozen, lips parted, no words forming. Robert's face mirrored pure disbelief, like he was trying to catch up to a story unfolding faster than his brain could process. I straightened, lifting the folder just slightly, letting the embossed county seals gleam in the chandelier light. "This isn't rumor, this isn't hearsay. These are facts, documented, verified. You were planning to use Grandma's house to cover these debts, to hide them, and pretend everything was fine." The whispers in the room grew louder. A few guests craned their necks, trying to see the folder, to follow along. I could see Courtney's hands trembling, clutching Jared's tuxedo sleeve. Her eyes were wide, horrified, disbelief etched into every line of her face. "You told me you were an investor," she shouted suddenly, voice breaking, her veil slipping slightly. "You said the house was paid for. We were safe." Jared's lip curled, familiar sneer attempting to form, but it faltered under the weight of reality. "We were going to be," he stammered, reaching toward her, helpless. "Once Mom gave me the deed, I just needed a little time. It was an investment strategy. His words were flimsy, transparent. The room leaned in, everyone sensing the collapse of the facade. Sylvia tried to interject, voice rising. We just wanted them to be happy. We were securing their start in life. But no one was listening to her anymore. The performance had shattered. I looked directly at Courtney, eyes steady. Ask him to show you his credit report. Before you sign anything, don't take anyone's word here. Not mine, not your mother's, not his. The numbers will tell you the truth. She nodded slowly, processing, turning to look at Jared with growing realization. His confident posture had dissolved into tension, his jaw tight, hands fidgeting. Robert's face shifted from disbelief to a quiet panic, realizing he had miscalculated the situation entirely. The weight of our truth pressed down on the family like a hammer. The room was still. The band had gone silent, servers froze mid-step, and even the wedding coordinator lingered, unsure if they should intervene. I felt a strange calm wash over me. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't making a spectacle. The truth had been delivered precisely, efficiently. I glanced at the folder, satisfied, but kept my voice low, deliberate, almost conversational. The house at 42 Elm Street isn't a gift. It's not yours to give. Grandma Beatrice revoked the trust, transferred it to me, legally. And Jared, those debts, they're real, substantial. And you plan to use that house to cover them without anyone knowing. Courtney's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock and a dawning sense of relief that someone had spoken up. Guests whispered, some pointing, some shaking their heads, processing the unfolding reality. Jared's shoulders slumped slightly, the facade gone, leaving only panic and confusion. Sylvia finally found her voice, shrill and frantic. You're ruining everything. You're jealous, mentally unstable, trying to embarrass us. I shook my head slowly. No, I'm enforcing the law, protecting Grandma's legacy, ensuring the truth is known. This isn't about embarrassment, it's about responsibility. Robert swallowed hard, face ashen. He had no counter, no defense. His hands hovered near his pockets, twitching nervously. The audience watched, some frozen, some leaning forward, sensing the gravity. I stepped slightly forward, letting my presence fill the space without aggression, commanding attention through calm authority. Jared, this isn't speculation. You can't hide debts with property that isn't yours. You owe the creditors. That house cannot and will not be used to cover them. It's mine. All of it. The collective silence that followed was staggering. Guests whispered behind hands. Some turned to each other, eyes wide with disbelief. I felt the adrenaline settle into a sharp, cold clarity. Justice, measured and precise, was being served. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't causing chaos. I was simply letting the truth exist. Letting the law speak louder than any performance they had staged for the past decade. Jared, now pale and trembling, looked to Sylvia for rescue, but her face had lost all composure, eyes wide, lips pressed thin. Robert seemed frozen, a silent witness to the collapse. Courtney's eyes welled with tears, a mix of relief and horror as she realized the scale of deception she had almost walked into. I took a deep breath, letting the moment linger, letting the weight of the truth settle in the room. This was what justice looked like. Me, calm, precise, armed with a fact and law, standing against years of manipulation and deceit. No shouting, no dramatics, just undeniable truth. And for the first time in years, I felt the thrill of balance, of the scales tilting finally in my favor, as the family that had tried to erase me was forced to face the consequences of their actions right here, right now. The aftermath of revealing Jared's debts and the truth about the house was instantaneous, like a shockwave tearing through the room. Sylvia froze first, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, desperate to find a word, an excuse, anything to regain control. But nothing came. Robert's face was gray, lips trembling, hands shaking as if the weight of reality had suddenly become physical. The guests murmured, whispering behind hands, craning their necks, and some even moved closer, curiosity and disbelief written across every face. The carefully curated image of the perfect family, the golden child, the generous, capable parents, all of it shattered in moments. Sylvia tried to raise her voice, shrill and loud, pointing at me, attempting to rally support from anyone willing to believe her. She's unstable. She forged those papers. This is harassment. This is fraud. She screamed, voice bouncing off the chandeliers, desperate and sharp. Robert grabbed at her arm, trying to steady her, but even his usually calm, enabling presence was gone, replaced by panic and disbelief. I remained calm, almost eerily so, letting her words hang in the air, unchallenged, because the evidence spoke for itself. I didn't have to shout or plead. The truth had already taken root. Jared, pale and panicked, still holding the giant cardboard key like a security blanket, looked between us, eyes wide, realizing the world he thought he controlled was crumbling. He stumbled backward, almost knocking into a waiter, hands raised in a helpless gesture. Courtney, his bride, finally spoke, her voice trembling but clear. "Is this true?" she asked, holding Jared's arm, eyes brimming with tears, mascara running down her cheeks. The tension in the room shifted slightly, the guests leaning in, waiting for confirmation. I stepped a fraction closer to her, keeping my tone calm and soft, almost conspiratorial. "Ask him to show you his credit report before signing anything. It's all here. The debts, the pending accounts, everything. Make sure you understand what you're committing to," she gasped, pulling her phone to double-check, her fingers shaking. The realization hit her in waves. She had been about to step into a marriage under false pretenses, with the debts hidden behind theatrics and lies. Sylvia shrieked again, the sound raw with desperation. "This is all a misunderstanding. You can't believe her. She's manipulating the situation. She's a liar." Her voice cracked with fury, desperation, and for the first time, real fear. Robert, pale, stepped forward, looking around at the guests, attempting to salvage dignity. But every glance met incredulous stares. Even the extended family, who had sat quietly through years of subtle cruelty, were now whispering, exchanging shocked looks. I kept my voice even, steady, calm. "This isn't manipulation, Sylvia. This is law. Grandma Beatrice revoked your trustee rights. The house belongs to me. And Jared, your debts are real, substantiated. You were planning to cover them with the house. That's the reality." The room absorbed it slowly, murmurs swelling as everyone began to grasp the truth. Guests shifted in their chairs, some exchanging astonished glances, a few murmuring quietly about the sheer audacity and drama of it all. Jared's shoulders slumped, his confident demeanor crumbling. He tried to protest, to argue, to pull Courtney back, but his voice had no authority here. She looked at him, horror etched in every feature, and finally, for the first time, questioned him openly. "You lied to me. You told me everything was secure, that we were safe. How could you?" Her voice trembled, a mixture of fear, hurt, and disbelief. He stammered, trying to explain, fumbling through half-hearted excuses about investment strategies, about timing, about needing a little more time. But the truth had already been laid bare. Robert and Sylvia tried to interrupt, but every word they spat fell flat, drowned out by the murmurs and stares of everyone witnessing the collapse of their illusion. Their threats escalated, a flurry of bluster and indignation. "We'll sue you, we'll have you disbarred," Sylvia shrieked, pointing fingers, voice high-pitched, cracking in panic. "You can't do this," Robert added, voice tense, trembling, a man unmoored. I shook my head slowly, keeping my tone controlled, precise. "Grandma is of sound mind. I have the affidavit, the notarized documents, everything, recorded and verified. There is no loophole. This is the truth. You can't touch it, and you can't give away what isn't yours." The room was still for a beat, the collective gasp of the audience palpable. Guests whispered, craning to see the documents I held, understanding that the drama wasn't just family squabbles, it was an exposure of fraud, mismanagement, and deception. Sylvia's face went pale, a mix of rage and disbelief. Robert looked utterly defeated, no words coming. Jared sank into the chair beside him, defeated, looking smaller than he had ever appeared. Courtney's eyes welled with tears, both in relief that the truth had come to light and in shock at the web of lies she had narrowly escaped. I turned slightly, letting the audience feel the weight of calm authority in contrast to the chaos around us. I wasn't here to fight physically, to yell, or to embarrass. I was here to assert what was right, to enforce truth, and to protect Grandma's legacy. The room's energy shifted, guests leaning in, whispers growing, the atmosphere charged with realization. The tables that had been set for celebration now felt like a courtroom. The witness box being the space of the head table, the evidence in my hands. I allowed a small pause, letting the impact sink in, then spoke softly but clearly, directing my words to the relevant parties. "Jared, this isn't just a misunderstanding or a minor mistake. These are debts, real debts, that you intended to cover with a house you weren't entitled to, and you, Mom and Dad, attempted to perform generosity at the expense of truth, legality, and responsibility." Sylvia's lips trembled, hands shaking slightly as she tried to regain her composure, but even she knew the room had turned. Robert exhaled shakily, shoulders slumping, silent acknowledgement of the inevitability. Courtney finally stood, shaking, tears falling freely, and for the first time took control. "I need to see everything, the accounts, the statements, all of it, before we sign anything." Jared tried to protest, flailing, but the guests had their attention fixed, and the weight of their judgment hung heavily. I nodded once, just slightly, signaling understanding and agreement. The moment had fully arrived. The confrontation was no longer personal. It had become public, legal, social a reckoning. The parents tried one last desperate attempt at authority, but it was hollow. The room had witnessed. The truth had been stated, and the audience understood the imbalance, the deceit, and the restoration of power to its rightful place. I could feel a wave of relief, deep and profound, washing over me. I wasn't triumphant in a gloating sense. This wasn't about taking joy in their downfall. This was about reclaiming what had been stolen and ensuring that the lies, manipulation, and concealment would not continue. Every step, every breath felt lighter. The burden of past slights, injustices, and forced invisibility beginning to lift. I allowed myself a slow exhale, letting the adrenaline drain, and turned my back toward the chaos. The applause, the murmurs, the shocked whispers, they followed me, but I kept walking, deliberately, with the calm, measured steps of someone who had finally claimed authority over their own life. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The shockwave of truth had been delivered, and I had witnessed it land. And as I stepped toward the exit, the weight of being the scapegoat, the carrier of secrets, and the invisible daughter lifted, replaced by a quiet, satisfying clarity. The illusion of the perfect family had fractured, and I had emerged with dignity, control, and the right to move forward. The room behind me buzzed with disbelief, outrage, and stunned acknowledgement, but it no longer held me. I was free, grounded, and in possession of what was rightfully mine, and in that moment, a profound, exhausting relief settled over me. Finally, for the first time in years, I felt seen, unburdened, and untouchable by the lies that had once defined my life. 30 days later, the moving truck idled in the driveway of 42 Elm Street, the crisp autumn air carrying the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves. I stood on the sidewalk with a cup of coffee, watching movers haul the last boxes out. These weren't my boxes. They weren't filled with my belongings. Just remnants of the family that had tried to claim what wasn't theirs. Grandma Beatrice stood beside me, looking younger than her years, wearing a bright yellow cardigan and leaning lightly on her cane. She smiled. The stress lines softened around her mouth. "Is that the last of it?" I asked. "The house is empty," she corrected gently. "Clean. There's a difference." I took a deep breath, letting the sound of the truck engines and distant rustle of leaves fill the silence. The porch needed painting. The garden was overgrown with weeds from years of neglect, but the bones of the house were solid. I unlocked the front door with my key, the real key, not a cardboard prop, and stepped inside. The house echoed, sunlight streaming through the bay windows, illuminating dust motes dancing lazily in the air. It smelled faintly of perfume, cigars, and the memory of the family that had tried to control it. "It smells like them," I murmured, wrinkling my nose. Grandma chuckled softly. "We'll paint, open the windows. A good breeze will clear that out in an hour." She walked to the center of the living room, hands on her hips, eyes scanning every detail. "I built this house with your grandfather in 1975, she said quietly, almost to herself. "We wanted it to be a place of safety, a sanctuary. When I let Robert take over, I thought I was keeping it in the family. I didn't realize I was feeding a parasite." She turned to me, eyes wet. "I'm so sorry, Holly. I should have stepped in sooner. Stop them when you were 18. I put my arm around her. "You saved me, Grandma." "No, I saved myself." We walked through the house slowly, room by room. Every corner held memories, some painful, some faintly comforting. The dining room would become a library. My old bedroom, now completely gutted, would be my home office. I could almost imagine myself sitting there, paperwork spread out, sunlight on my face, No fear of someone undermining me. What about them, I asked, glancing toward the empty rooms that had once been full of chaos. They rented a small apartment near the highway, Grandma replied, voice steady, matter of fact. No dishwasher, no yard. Robert had to return to work as a consultant. Sylvia, well, she's discovering that without a big house and a successful son to brag about, her friends aren't interested in her calls. I let out a small laugh. Lonely, I said, half joking. Yes, Grandma agreed, nodding. But it is the life they built, brick by brick. You, on the other hand, built something stronger. We stepped out onto the back porch, sitting on the steps, watching the leaves drift lazily to the ground. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything. No career accolades, no legal victories, no battles with family mattered in this moment. I had my career, my dignity, and Grandma beside me, the person who had truly loved and believed in me all along. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Sylvia. Holly, please. The apartment smells like smoke. Can we just come over for dinner? We can talk. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. I thought about the 18-year-old girl with the trash bag of clothes, the one who begged for love and shelter. And I smiled softly. I tapped the block button and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Grandma looked at me curiously. Who was that, she asked. Nobody, I said, leaning my head against her shoulder. Just a wrong number. We sat there in the quiet, the sun warm on our backs, leaves swirling around us in the gentle autumn breeze. The house, finally, was ours. Truly ours, not just in title, but in spirit. Every room, every wall, every corner felt alive with possibility, free from the weight of the past. And in that serene stillness, I felt a closure, a deep, resonant relief, and the quiet satisfaction of reclaiming not just a house, but my history, my peace, and my future. And that's the story after years of struggle, being overlooked and underestimated. The protagonist finally reclaimed her childhood home, her dignity, and her peace. It wasn't about revenge. It was about standing up for what's right and protecting what truly mattered. Life isn't always fair, but preparation, patience, and resilience can change everything. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and consider subscribing for more real-life moments of triumph and unexpected twists. There's always more to uncover, and we'd love to share it with you.